All right, again, happy Father's Day, everybody. I was really excited to be able to give the lesson, the sermon today on Father's Day, because being a father was becoming a father was something that was very special to me, as well as being one. Actually, becoming a father was probably one of the longest days of my life. 40-some hour long day of my life. So it was memorable nonetheless, and something that is very special and important to me. I love my kids so much. We have, my wife and I, Tiffany, we have two children, if you haven't met them yet, Briar and Dane. Briar is going to be 9 here in a few weeks, and Dane is a little 3-year-old bundle of something. But we love him still. And so Father's Day is special to me, and so I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to do the Father's Day sermon this year. First things first, again, if you're a father today, go ahead and raise your hand, father, grandfather. If you're a grandfather, I'm sure you're a father too, so that's the way it works. Good. Everybody give all the fathers a round of applause that are here today. Because it's kind of funny. Mother's Day comes around, and the sermon on Mother's Day is how awesome mothers always are, and then Father's Day always seems like, man, you got to step it up, and it's just like, come on. So I wanted to avoid that this year a little bit, so we'll get into that a little bit more. But I know that Mother's Day, mothers are held in this really high regard, but fathers are so important to a child's life as well. And so before we get into the sermon, I just want to go over a little bit of things that fathers give to their children that mothers may, somewhat, but they're just not as equipped as a father for these things. The first one, for boys, these are the things that boys learn from their father. First one, boys learn how to treat women from their father. And that's an important one. By the father modeling how he treats his wife is a huge way that a son learns how to treat women as he gets older. He's going to treat his wife as he sees his father treating their mother. Another thing that boys learn from their father is they learn self-confidence and self-value. A father can speak into a young boy's life, and it gives them that value and that confidence that they have. Another thing that they learn is they learn about strength, service, and sacrifice from their father. They see how much their father gives up for them on a regular basis. They see when a father is serving in his home, in his community, and around in their church, they can see that service and that sacrifice that their father has, and they learn from that as well. But also, boys learn how to be loved by their heavenly Father from their father. And we don't get a real clear picture of what a father's love really is unless we've had our own father love us in that way. So it's an easy leap to see what boys learn from their dad, but little girls learn a lot from their fathers as well. Little girls, they learn how they should be treated by boys. They learn that they should be treated the same way that their dad treated them. And if they get in a relationship that the guy doesn't treat her the same way that her dad treated her mother, it's see you later. That it's that kind of a thing. And so they learn how they should be treated by boys as they grow up. Girls learn from their father that they are a priceless treasure, that they're a princess. And so they get their self-value a lot from their father as well. This is one that my wife likes to tell my daughter about all the time. It's girls learn how to use their secret power from... They learn how to use their secret power from their mother. And what that secret power is what my wife explains to our daughter is secret power is that power of influence. Well, Briar might learn about it from Tiffany, but she learns how to use it on her father. Because from the time they're young, they've got you wrapped around that little finger, and only a daughter can wrap a father around a finger like a little girl can. But girls also learned how to be loved by their heavenly Father from their father. Moms nurture their children when they're young, but what dads' one of their main responsibilities is to transition a child from childhood into adulthood. That is what the father does. It's an important role. If a mom tells a little boy that he's strong, she's the nurturer. She's always encouraging. And so when she tells him he's strong, it's a compliment. But when a dad tells a boy he's strong, he's strong. Same with a little girl. You know, a little girl, a mom tells her little girl that she's beautiful. She's thankful for the compliment. But at the same time, when a dad tells his daughter that she's a beautiful young woman, then she is a beautiful young woman inside and out. So dads are very, very important. They transition their children from being a child into being an adult. A lot of cultures have something similar to that. It's called a rite of passage. We don't necessarily have a specific one in our culture today. Many families might do something a little different as a rite of passage. In my family, we never called it that. We never called it a rite of passage, but it was kind of always that unspoken thing. We like to hunt, and so hunting was kind of like a rite of passage for us growing up in my family. I remember being 5 years old and my dad taking me up in his tree stand to hunt with him. And then as I grew and became old enough to hunt, then he taught me everything that I needed to know about doing it. And then when I finally got my first deer, to see the look of pride in his face as to that I got my first deer was a huge boost in my own confidence and self-value. And so fathers are very important in bringing their children from being a child into being an adult. Moms get all the glory. Dads get blamed for messing up their kids' lives. You always hear people having daddy issues. You hardly ever hear people talking about mommy issues. Everybody's got daddy issues, though. Dads they get blamed for that because they hold the responsibility. They have broad shoulders to hold a lot of the responsibility for. Mom fixes emotional problems, but dad, they fix the physical ones. We're problem solvers. So, and every year, Father's Day comes around, and like I said earlier, the Father's Day sermon is about men stepping it up. So I wanted to avoid that. I want to take a break from doing that men step it up this year. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to have a sermon that celebrates manliness, because manliness is pretty awesome. Chris is all excited right up here. He's like, yeah, manliness. Going to hear some grunts going on here in a little bit. So we're going to celebrate manliness because being men is what God created us to be. Right, men? We were created to be men. And so we need to celebrate that. We need to be proud of who God created us to be, and we need to live in that. And I say it all the time, we are most fulfilled in life when we are living the way that we were created to live. We are most fulfilled in life when we are living the way that we were created to live. And so we achieve far greater by doing what we were created for than by doing something that we weren't created for. It's like, have you ever tried hammering in a screw with a hammer? It just doesn't work real well. Or pounding a nail in with a screwdriver. I mean, they just weren't made for doing those things. And so it just doesn't work because you can't pound stuff in with a screwdriver. It's just not heavy enough. You just can't pound a screw in with a hammer because the screw just wasn't made for that. So we're far more effective when we're living, doing the things that we were created to do. Our society has tried to blur the lines between, what a man and a woman should do, and I'm not going to get into all of that here. It just doesn't work as well to live with those blurred lines because that's not what we were created for. So I entitled this sermon, Born to be Wild, The Art of Manliness, because we need to celebrate being men today on Father's Day. God created men and women both in His image. So He created both men and women in His image. Now, that doesn't mean that we are created to be the same. It means that to get a full picture of who God is, you have to have both man and woman. And I've heard Pastor Chris talk about this in a sermon, where a marriage is more of the perfect picture of who God is. That without woman, we wouldn't have a full picture of who God is. Without men, we wouldn't have a full picture of who God is. With both of them together, we have a more complete picture of who God really is. So like I said earlier, Tiffany and I are blessed with two beautiful children, Briar and Dane. My daughter is older, so obviously we raised her first. That's kind of the way it works. She's your typical little girl. She likes kittens, she likes butterflies, rainbows, playing with dolls, and don't forget the horses. She loves horses, and that's what little girls love. They love those types of things. And even now during the movies, just the other day we were watching a movie and it got to this mushy romantic part, and I look over and she's got this huge grin on her face, and I'm like, who teaches kids this stuff? And I've pointed it out to Tiffany, and she just rolls her eyes, and it's just it's just ingrained in them. But then Tiffany was pregnant with Dane, and Briar wished and wished and wished that she could have a little sister. She was completely devastated when we found out we were having a boy. She's okay with it now, sometimes. But then when Dane came along, the first year, everything was fine. After that first year, it's like everything we knew about parenting out the window. Everything we knew about parenting out the window. It was very clear that he was not a little girl. He did not do anything that little girls did at that point. Just the other day, I had finished making supper, and Dane pulled a chair up to the stove, climbed up on there, and pulled himself up with his hands on the stovetop. And I'm like, hey, you can't be doing that. It's like, how many times did we go over this? Luckily the stove wasn't hot. We hadn't used the burners, but everything was in the oven. But I was like, that's why we nicknamed you Dangerous, because that's his nickname, because his name is Dane. And he's like, I'm not dangerous, you're dangerous. And he jumps down off the chair and says, no, I'm Super Guy. And he's like, no, I'm Green Lantern. He gets into the superhero pose, and he starts running through the house. It's a picture of Dane up there right now. He starts running through the house. Then he gets in the living room, gets down on his hands and knees, starts barking like a chihuahua, and then crawls into the kitchen saying, I'm Super Cat. And it's like you can't make this stuff up. It's just ridiculous. And this picture I took just this morning. This is what I woke up to this morning for Father's Day. Is Dane. He's got a Superman cape on, a Spider-Man shirt, and a Batgirl mask on, and he's pretending to be a superhero. So that was just this morning. This is what we live with on a daily basis, the superheroes. But see, what God created in each of us as men is ingrained in us from the time we're little. God created us to be heroes. He created us to be warriors. He created us to be explorers and adventurers. That's what he created us to be as men. That is ingrained in us from the time we're young boys. It's completely different than what he's ingrained in girls. It's not rainbows and puppy dogs and ponies, unless you're kicking them or something, which, no, he doesn't kick puppy dogs, thankfully. But there's something ingrained in him. And that's the part of the image of God that we contain. We contain that adventurous side of God, that risk-taking part that men hold. That's what makes us tick. It's what made us tick since the time we were young boys. It's what has made men tick from the beginning of time, is that being adventurous. Just a quick commercial break here, because a lot of the stuff that I got isn't necessarily all of my own ideas. Part of it came from a book called Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. So men, I would encourage you, if you like to read, or even if you don't like to read, maybe you can find it on audiobook, I don't know. But John Eldredge, the book is called Wild at Heart, and it's a great book for men about experiencing what God created us to be. Or women, if you wanted to read it and look into the dark minds of men, if you dare go there, that's fine too. The other resource that I really like that has a lot of information like this in it too is a website called artofmanliness.com, and a great website. It's got articles in there everywhere from trimming mustaches and playing mumbledy-peg to how to be a better neighbor and be a better family man, kind of a thing. So it's got a lot of great articles. Some of them are videos if you don't like to read. If you get bored during my sermon, you can go ahead and check it out on your phone. Just put your headphones in if you're watching a video, please. I'll use that as a cue as I'm going too long then. But great resources. Also, want to draw attention to you men too. We have a men's conference coming up in September. There's more of these cards out there in the back. But great men's conference that our district puts on every year for men. It's September 25th and 26th at Spencer Lake. If we get 10 or more coming up, then it's $75 for the weekend. That includes meals, lodging, and the conference. And they do all kinds of stuff. They do, I think they give away a grill. They do different competitions. Feats of strength, I think is what they call the competitions. And they do like flag football games and other things like that for all of you manly men out there. But we're going to be discussing, as we get into the sermon here, we're going to be discussing the story of Gideon. And the story of Gideon, it starts out in Judges chapter 6. Gideon is he's basically this, it starts out this guy being scared, but where it starts out, Israel is being invaded by the army of Midian. Midian is this other country that is coming in and invading. What they're doing, they're camping out in their fields and destroying all their crops every year and just terrorizing them. And so everybody in Israel is kind of afraid of the Midianites. And then they pray to God for God to come and save them. And so then it picks up here in verse 11 where an angel of the Lord comes. So verse 11 of Judges chapter 6 says this: "The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abizrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites." So Gideon is threshing wheat in a winepress because he's afraid of the Midianites. Most threshing floors, threshing wheat in a wine press first, you don't do that. It's just not what a wine press is made for. You thresh wheat on a threshing floor. A threshing floor is normally kept outside of the city, so that way there's a good steady breeze to blow everything away, and it's just basically a round stone slab that sits there that they thresh wheat on. A wine press is kept more inside the city. A lot of times they're indoors, and it's a big stone vat that people get in and they stomp the grapes with their feet. And that's what a wine press is. It's not made for threshing wheat. It doesn't have the breeze blowing through. It's got walls all around it to hold the wine in. And so he's in there threshing wheat in a wine press out of fear because he's afraid. So he's just kind of like this meek, fearful man that's afraid of these other people. So that's what Gideon was doing when the angel came to speak to him. This is what the angel says in verse 12. "When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, 'The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior.'" The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior. Now, Gideon, he's just like this afraid little man of these Midianite armies, and the angel comes and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." You see, even when no one else can see who our true self is, the Creator, the one that created us, knows what our true self is. And everybody else looks at Gideon and they see a nail, somebody that's going to get pounded, but the Lord looks at him and sees a hammer, because that's what He created Gideon to be. It's like when my kids show me one of their drawings. I don't know if you guys have young children, and they bring you a drawing, and it's basically scribbles on a sheet of paper. And then before you get the chance to ask them what it is, they ask you to guess what it is. And you get this, you just, all these things are running through your head, and you're trying to figure out what exactly it is that they were trying to draw. And you're like, is it an elephant? And then they get this disappointed look on their face that, you just ruined all their hopes and dreams of becoming an artist because I didn't know what they drew on that paper. And then they're like, no, it's a kangaroo horseback riding in a swarm of bees, something completely ridiculous. And you're like, oh, well, that was my second guess. But the thing of that is that nobody else can tell what it was, but that doesn't mean that that's not what it is. Because they're the ones that drew it. They're the ones that get to define what it is and what it does and who it is. So just because nobody else can look at that drawing and say that doesn't look like a kangaroo riding a horse, doesn't mean that it's not a kangaroo riding a horse. It's the Creator that gets to say who we are, what we do. Nobody else could see that Gideon was a mighty warrior. Not even Gideon could see himself as that mighty warrior. But God is the Creator, and He knows what He created him to be and what purpose He made him for. Gideon is this afraid little man. He'd forgotten that when he was 3 years old running around his mom's house, that he pretended he was a mighty warrior, a superhero, pretending that every stick that he picked up was a sword or a spear. He forgot that that's who he was when he was growing up. But we're a lot like Gideon too. We have forgotten that we too are heroes, that we too are warriors. This is what Gideon's response is in verse 13. He says, "Pardon me, Lord." Gideon replied, "But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." Basically, he's saying, "Excuse me, God, but where have you been during all this time?" Basically he's saying, where have you been while Midian's been attacking us? In verse 14, it says, "The Lord turned to him and said, 'Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hands. Am I not sending you?'" So God is saying here, "Hey, I'm the one sending you. This is what I'm doing now. I'm sending you to go out there and defeat the Midianites. I'm not sending anybody else. I'm sending you. It's on your shoulders now." He says, "But I'm going to be with you." And notice he says, "Go in the strength that you have." He doesn't say, go in this huge strength that you don't have yet. He's saying, "Going in the strength that you have and rescue Israel out of Midian's hand." Again, in verse 15, Gideon replies, "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." And the Lord answered in verse 16, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." And we're just like Gideon sometimes, maybe all the time we're just like Gideon, but we live in fear and we live in this submissiveness. The world around us has kind of clouded of who we are. A lot of us, maybe we sit in cubicles and desks all day long, and whatever it may be, and we don't have a whole lot of excitement. We go home, and it's you just have more and more and more and more on your plate all the time, and you just don't. You may be forgotten that who God created you to be. He created you to be a warrior, an explorer, an adventurer. And not that those things don't need to be done. Those things still need to be done. But at the same time, we're more equipped to do them when we're doing what we were created for. When we're being that adventurer, when we're being that warrior. So, embracing our wild nature in a healthy manner will enable us to be more productive, better husbands, better fathers, better employees. It builds our confidence and self-value, and it makes us feel like a man. We learn to take risks and challenge ourselves. We learn to step out of our comfort zones. Gideon had to step out of his comfort zone. As the story continues with Gideon, basically Gideon is like, "Okay, if I'm going to do this, God, you got to give me some signs." So God gave him a couple of signs, and he said finally he'll go and do it. But then Gideon had to raise up this army. And, I don't know about you, but Gideon isn't the kind of guy that just kind of exudes a leadership at this point in the story. You can't just raise up an army. It's not like thousands of people were just waiting to follow Gideon. It would be kind of like me if I were right here to say, "Hey, let's get a group of us together, fly over to Iraq and take on ISIS together." How many of you guys would raise your hands and go with me right now? Well, we got a few. How many of your wives would let you go? But the thing is like, he didn't exude a whole lot of confidence in a lot of other people at this time. So he had to step out of his comfort zone to get this. By the end of the story, when we get to chapter 7, verse 17, listen to how Gideon sounds at this point in the story in chapter 7, verse 17. He says, "Watch me," he told them. "Follow my lead. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow yours and shout for the Lord and for Gideon." This is a totally different person from chapter 6 to chapter 7. In chapter 6, he's the scared guy threshing wheat in a wine press. All of a sudden, God calls him, gives him a purpose, and he is now this mighty warrior for the Lord. And, when he went into battle, he didn't go into battle with thousands of men. He went into battle against tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of men with 300 men is what he went into battle with. And he's going into battle with confidence and as a leader. Gideon sounds confident and in control. He sounds like he's a strong leader now. He's sure of himself and going up against tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of men with just 300 men. He is a mighty warrior. In a short time, he goes from hiding in a wine press to being a mighty warrior in a relatively short period of time. How does that happen? I mean, that doesn't just happen. You don't just go from working in a cubicle to being a commander out on a battlefield. So what's the process that Gideon takes to get to that point in his life? I broke it down into a few steps from what I've read in the story. Step one, there was a problem to solve. As men, we tend to be problem solvers. We see something that's broken and we want to fix it. And the problem in this story was pretty severe, and so the fix for it is also going to be pretty severe oftentimes. And in life, there's always going to be problems that need to be fixed, and we can call that our calling. We can call it our purpose. But there's problems that we can fix, that we see, and that we can take action to. The second step of it is to take initiative. To take initiative. There just wasn't, like I said, there wasn't thousands of people just waiting to be in Gideon's army and lead them. He was, as he said, he was the least of his clan, and his clan was the smallest in the tribe of Manasseh. And Manasseh wasn't a very big tribe in Israel. He was basically saying, I'm a nobody of nobodies. And nobody was just looking for Gideon for leadership. So he had to get out there and he had to recruit people. And when he first recruited people, he came up with 32,000 men ready to fight. And then little by little, God asked him to whittle those people down. So from 32,000, he sent 20,000 of them home. From those 12,000 that were left, he whittled them down to another 300 to go into battle. Step three, Gideon, he listened to God's direction in everything that he did. He didn't do anything without listening to God's direction. From his calling right on down to the battle plan, Gideon heeded God's instruction. Had Gideon been a trained commander, he probably wouldn't have listened to God and taking 32,000 men down to 300. I mean, that's just insane for somebody who's not trained in it. But for somebody who would have been a trained commander, they would have been like, no way, I'm not doing it. But Gideon had no choice. He was in over his head. He had nothing to do but listen to God and have faith in it. And the other thing is Gideon, he was willing to take the risk. He was willing to take the risk. Faith isn't really faith until it's been acted on. Until it's been acted on, faith is just belief. Until you act on that faith, it's just belief. A couple years ago, I did a Tough Mudder. I don't know if any of you know what the Tough Mudder is. It's one of those obstacle course mud runs. It's 13 miles through the mud. There was about 30-some different obstacles that we did. Obstacles like you got to swim through ice water and you got to run through fire. You're crawling through like a foot of mud with electric wires hanging above you that you get shocked with 10,000 volts when you hit them, and you do hit them, and it doesn't feel nice. That's the Tough Mudder, and yes, people pay money to put themselves through that. I paid money to put myself through that. I'm not sure exactly why, but I completed all the obstacles in the Tough Mudder except for one. You see, I have this irrational fear of jumping into water. Don't ask me to explain why. That's what makes it irrational. There's no real good reason why. But I have this irrational fear of jumping into water. And one of the obstacles, the one that I didn't complete, you had to jump off of this 15-foot platform down into this pond below. It wasn't a clean swimming pool or anything. It was a muddy pond. And, they had lifeguards there and everything for safety. And I believed that I would be safe if I jumped into that water. But I couldn't bring myself to do it from my fear. I didn't have faith that I could do it. Even though I believed that I would be fine if I did, I didn't have the faith in it. There's a big difference between faith and belief, and you have to be willing to take that risk. If you don't take that risk, there's regret. I mean, I regret not completing that obstacle, even though I was scared out of my mind to do it. Gideon was willing to take the risk, and we too need to be willing to take risks sometimes. It's amazing what we're capable of, again, when we're doing what we were created to do. We're going to shift gears a little bit here, and we're going to talk about applying this not only to our physical lives and what we do as recreation, but also applying this to our spiritual walks, applying this to our spiritual lives. Because we can live our spiritual lives in the same way. When you read the New Testament, there's verses all through the New Testament that equate our spiritual walks with being warriors, with being in war, with being soldiers, and there's a reason for that. It's because we need to equate our spiritual walk with this adventure, because it is an adventure. Our spiritual journey is an adventure that we need to live, and it needs to be exciting to us. Because really, men, we're like a band of brothers in this together. We're in this fight together, in this walk together. We need to have each other's backs. So from things, we can view we can start exploring our own spiritual selves and be explorers of spiritual things. We can be adventurers together in things that we do in sharing the gospel with other people. We can be warriors in fighting against the evil things in our homes, in our communities, and out in our world. But we need to fight these things together. We're stronger together, and we need to take risks and live in faith. 1 Corinthians 16:13 says this, and this is from the Living Bible, which I like this translation the best, the way it's worded. It's keep your eyes open for spiritual dangers, stand true to the Lord, act like men, be strong. So keep your eyes open for spiritual dangers, stand true to the Lord, and act like men, be strong. So we need to, it's telling us we need to act like men in our spiritual walks. We need to stay true to the Lord, do what He says. Act like men. Other versions say be courageous there instead of act like men. But that is how we have to live our spiritual lives. It's not just what we do in our recreation. It's what we do in our spiritual lives as well. Men, we are what God made us. We are what God made us. He made us to be proud, relentless, strong, courageous, loyal, risk-taking warriors. We are even if others can't see those things in us, that is who you are. Even if you can't see it in yourself, that is who you are. God created you to be that. You were made in His image, and that is who He is. So be proud of who you are, of who you were made to be. And if you haven't been living that way, then you haven't really been living. And you need to start living your life that way. If we could have the worship team start coming on up here as we get ready to close. And so as we close here, I'm going to give those of you who've never taken the opportunity to give your life over to Christ, we're going to give you that opportunity now. And if Carrie, when you get up here, if you can go ahead and give a little piano. So giving your life over to Christ, all that means is that you're making a commitment to follow Christ in your life. You're making a commitment. And you may not have completely understand all of that yet. Most of us don't completely understand everything that means yet. We're all still learning along the way, along our journey. But each of us, has to start somewhere, and right here, right now is as good a place as any. So if you guys could go ahead and bow your heads and close your eyes right now. If you would like to make that commitment to Christ for the first time today, go ahead and slip up a hand while no one's looking around. Okay, looks like everybody here today is good with that. That's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to close this out in prayer. We're going to thank God for the strength that He's given us as men. We're going to pray for the fathers. Dear Lord, we thank You so much for blessing our lives in the way that you've done, Lord. We, as men, we thank You for creating us to be these mighty warriors, these adventurers and explorers, Lord. And I pray that You can instill that back in the hearts of the men that are here today, Lord. I pray that they can find adventure and excitement in their life again, that they can see that they were created for these things. And Lord, I pray for the fathers that are here today, Lord. I pray that through their lives, that their children can see these same qualities in them. I pray, Lord, that their children can grow, and that, Lord, that you can help these men transform the lives of their children from being a child to being an adult, which is so crucial in the lives of all of us, Lord. Right now, I pray as we all go home and celebrate Father's Day together, Lord, that families can continually grow closer together, that relationships that some have had with their fathers that have been strained, Lord, that they can be reunited and brought closer together, Lord. Lord, I thank you just for the blessing of your Son, Jesus, and the sacrifice that he made for each of our lives. And we ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. So, fathers, once again, happy Father's Day. As you walk out, there will be some ushers in the back that will have some chocolate for you guys. So for the men, you don't have to be a father for it. Just they'll hand it out to all the men. Right now, if I could have Mike go ahead, or are you doing the song first? Okay, they're doing the song first.